Another episode here of Getting There with Goz, where we talk about the career journeys of media members, coaches, athletes, business owners from upstate New York. You might know her from her time in the capital region, maybe from Syracuse, wherever. She's been all over upstate New York, and it's a perfect time to talk to her with Buffalo Bills next week, getting ready for their matchup on Thanksgiving. Wham out in Rochester. Jenna Cottrell joins us. I already gave a little spoiler there for the first question. So we usually start with this: 6, 7, 8 years old. Where'd you grow up? What'd you want to be as a kid? And was it that same dream job you wanted when you're 18 years old?
So I grew up in Saratoga Springs. I loved being from there, going to SPAC. There was so much fun. It's so funny when I left Saratoga, as a young adult, I was like, oh, Saratoga's fine, like whatever. And then now being an adult, I'm like, it was beautiful. I was definitely way spoiled. But when I was younger, I actually thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Because I just love to argue. I didn't really find this career field till a little later because I feel like most people in the industry have always wanted to do this job. Like they've always been gravitating towards media or, there's like home videos of them as a kid, doing the news and stuff like that. It was not like that at all for me. I was actually a psych major when I went to Syracuse. And that was because I kind of had an interesting or an uncommon story growing up because my brother is actually a leukemia survivor. He's been in remission now for a long time, but he was diagnosed when I was 12 and he was 15. And I, being a 12-year-old, you're already awkward. Let's be real. At least I was. And it was like, what can I do that made me feel normal? And playing sports was such a huge part of that. I played soccer. I played lacrosse. I skied, all of those things. And it kind of went from me being on the field, my teammates, to me watching sports as well. And I felt like, my upbringing had shaped so much about me. I was so curious how other people's upbringings like made them the way they were. So that was the initial thought of like, oh, psych, this would be great. Get to talk to people, interview them. And then I sat down in my first lecture with 500 other kids at Syracuse, and they were talking about Freud and how you have to do a bunch of research and how you really don't talk to patients. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm out. Like, I was like, I don't know. And Syracuse is obviously a private school. Like I went home for winter break that freshman year and I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like Syracuse is expensive. And I was actually at one of my friend's house and we were watching Sports Center. And my friend was like, Jenna, why don't you do this? And like pointed to the TV. And I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. And then from there, everything kind of like fell into place. I transferred to the Newhouse Communication School. I got in, which between you, me, and the lamppost, like no idea how that worked. But freshman year grades weren't the best. But yeah, and it started like that. But obviously I've been doing this now for, almost a decade. And I love it so much. You get to hear just sports. My thing is like sports are the good days. You know what I mean? Like news is very important. It plays a pivotal part in our community. You need to know what's going on. But sports is that sweet spot of camaraderie and passion and people excelling at things, whether it be from high school all the way to pro. And I just love that positivity and that aspect of it.
Let's go back to that Newhouse thing because you mentioned like that freshman year, the grades can be a little bit different. Were you intimidated, nervous, scared about applying to one of the biggest broadcasting schools, if not the biggest in the country?
So truth be told, like I didn't do my research at all. This is so absurd. The way I picked Syracuse was, you got to remember, you're 17 years old. I wanted to go to a big sports school because I was going to be a psych major. I was like, I want to go to a school that has good sports. My brother went to UConn. They had just wrapped up winning national championships. Syracuse, being from upstate New York, obviously always talked about, even though it's central New York, growing up in the Capital District, we would still talk about Syracuse so much. So I was like, all right, I was deciding, those were my two final schools to choose from. And I was like, whoever wins, they were playing in basketball that night. I was like, whoever wins this game, I'll go to that school. So I sit down on the couch. I start watching the game. It was the 6 overtime game. So I fell asleep on the couch because I'm, 17 and I had to get up early for soccer practice. So the next morning I wake up and I go to my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad, who won that game last night? And he goes, oh, Syracuse did. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to Syracuse. Like, again, decision-making skills, not the best at all. But it worked out. And then, me applying to Newhouse, I was terrified because I didn't know how good the school was. And then being on campus, It's very intimidating, especially as, there's so many women now that work in sports, and I love to see that representation, but that wasn't as present. It was still present, but it wasn't as much then. And also, like, it's one thing to see other women doing it. It's another thing for it to be you yourself. So I was really intimidated. But then I kind of just, I don't know, I kind of just embraced it and was like, all right, this is my challenge. Like, I don't see why I can't do this. Why am I putting limitations on myself when everyone else around me believes that I can do this? So it's been quite a journey, but I mean, I love what I do. Like, I adore my job, and I'm so thankful that I stuck with it, because there are obviously trying times in anyone's career journey. But I really appreciate those things, because I think it's given me confidence now on the back end because of what I've been through.
For sure. And especially in that television spot where you're talking about the anchor, the sports center look and say, I can do that. You're away from the play-by-play stuff. We've talked to other Syracuse graduates like yourself that focused on play-by-play, but it seems as if for you that internships might have been the biggest things. And maybe even here in upstate New York, were you able to land internships? And what were those experiences like for you in college?
I would recommend everyone do as many internships as possible, because, well, I say that it's challenging because there obviously a lot of them are not paid. And that was an obstacle for me to overcome, my colleagues, my classmates. But I was very fortunate. I got to intern with WTEN as well as WRGB. My actual internship at TEN was a news internship, and I just remember being like, "Whoa, I really want to get to sports." Like, I was like, I'm a very empathetic person. Like, I cry on command. Like, stories like that. Like, I'm a softie for sure. So I was like, I don't think I can do like the really tough news stuff. I give to people that do it so much credit, because again, it's a huge part of the stories that need to be told locally and nationally and all of those things. I just knew it wasn't for me. And then when I interned with the sports department at Channel 6 locally, I felt like, okay, I can do this. Like, this was fun. We got to do Giants camp was still going on at U Albany and stuff like that, where I was terrified. Don't get me wrong. Like, I was like, what am I doing? But it was really cool. And then I also interned at the radio station in Syracuse, WAER. So getting to do stuff like that, like, radio is cool, and I always really liked it. But I felt like for me, I really liked the on-air portion of like being expressive and getting to kind of be where people, like, be on the sidelines, be in those places. And I just felt like there was more opportunity for me in terms of local media, doing TV and stuff. But I loved it. And I felt like you learn so much. You learn the day-to-day grind that it takes to do this job. And while it is incredibly glamorous in some moments, as you know, behind the scenes, there are the days where you're like, whew, it's tough.
Yes.
Now, no one cares because we have a cool job. But you need to learn that going in, because the pay is not great. You work a lot of hours. You don't get holidays off. Like, there are drawbacks that some people, those are deal breakers for them. And that's totally understandable. But you have to figure out if that's what you want to deal with and that's what you're okay with. And to do that as early as possible is obviously, I think, the best way to go about it.
No doubt, especially those grind days where it's not all of a sudden glamorous, your face is not out there. If someone's chasing fame or chasing recognition, that's not going to happen for a while in your career.
Yeah.
But those are three really big heavy hitters in New York, and you were smart enough to look around and say, okay, I'm from Saratoga, I'm from upstate New York. I'm going to find places, whether it's close to my college or close to home, that I can really have success with and learn and have all those things happen. Now, they do eventually tell you have to leave Syracuse, like all good college students. As much as sometimes they want to stay, they have to get off campus and get their diploma. Is it true that your first job post-graduation was with ESPN?
Oh, so I was a production assistant. So that sounds like really glamorous. But I helped out with like the X Games. It was really cool. I mean, growing up, like, you watched ESPN. Everyone watched ESPN. So I got to help out with their X Games stuff, and going to Bristol, getting to see the ESPN headquarters, like walking by, some of the biggest names in sports, was just so cool. That was more of like a part-time type of situation until I found my first on-air job, because I remember I was working at a restaurant in Saratoga. Shout out the Horseshoe, if you all know it. Place that holds a spot in my heart. But I was bartending there, and I got a full-time offer from ESPN to be a full-time production assistant. And I was like, I had been working for them before, obviously in a part-time role. And I was like, I don't know, mom. I'm like, I feel like I can't take this job. My mom was like, what do you mean, Jenna? And I was like, I can't take this job. Like, I was like, I don't know. Something internally was like, I need to be, if you want to be on air, you need to be on air. Now, for some people, it takes getting in with the company and then going to be on air. But like ESPN, you can't rise the ranks of ESPN and expect to be a production assistant and then be put out in front of the camera. At least for me, I can be shy, which I know, hard to believe. I understand. But like for me, I needed those on air reps to really get comfortable. So I turned down the ESPN offer. And my mom did not talk to me for like a week and a half. And then, so there was a small TV station. It was an ABC CBS affiliate in Elmira, New York. Yes. So it's called WENY. And they didn't have any sports openings because, as many people know who are looking to find sports jobs, if a news station has, 15 on air people, maybe one, maybe two are sports jobs. It's challenging. There's not a lot of openings. So I went down to WENY. I was looking at all, like, this is a tip. So I was on YouTube looking at all these people's reels and stories who worked in small markets that I wanted to go to, that I was like, okay, I would go here. I would watch their reels and stuff, and I would email them and be like, hey, so and so, I just found your reel on YouTube. I really like this story that you did. I really like your writing here. Would you have any time to do a quick chat just about, I'm trying to break into the industry, stuff like that? I probably sent 40 of those emails. I probably heard back from 3 people. One of those, though, led to a job. And like, I remember I called my professor because I feel like when you apply to a job, it's like you shoot your resume out into space and then you just never hear back. And I remember my professor being like, Jason Benetti, he now does play-by-play for the Chicago White Sox. Phenomenal. He's so good at what he does. But he was like, Jenna, you might have 99 no's. All you need is that one person to say yes. And it's discouraging. How many times can you be slapped with rejection? But I got that job and I was able to go, and it's led me on the path. And like, I am so thankful for that first job because it gave me so many reps, and it was just me on my own trying to figure things out. And like, obviously a lot of trial by fire, but that's the best way to learn. And I think it's the most appropriate way to learn because it's not in front of thousands and thousands and thousands of people. If you make your mistakes, you can make them quietly and then move your way up.
It's amazing to think you and I have that Jason Benetti professor connection, although I didn't go to Syracuse because when Jason was working for the Syracuse Chiefs, now the Syracuse Mets, I was in studio host for the Score 1260. So Kevin Brown and Jason Benetti are both calling the games, and he's in my ear and calling those games, and I know Jason as well. So Professor Benetti, Jason, as you know him, crazy that connection there, that 7 degrees we got going on.
Yeah,
he's amazing. Like you said, he's all over the place now.
Oh my gosh. I see him like, what's he doing this week? He's all over the place. He is so good at what he does too, as you know.
Yeah, phenomenal talent. Cannot wait to continue to see where his career is going to go. So you land the gig at Elmira, and I think you laid it out really well there that if you want an on-air job, go and get the reps. What is that first job like for you? What are your responsibilities? What are your hours like? Take us through now that you're moving towards that on-air responsibility. What changes for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, like I said, a lot of trial by fire. So that was obviously, when you're in school, it's like, hey, you do one story a week. Okay, that's at least at Syracuse. Now you're doing one package a week, maybe more. You're going out. You're the one responsible for getting all your own video. You're the one responsible for producing all your shows. You're the one responsible for anchoring all your on-air stuff, your graphics, all of that. And that's a lot of responsibility. I think Syracuse did a great job preparing me for that, but I think no school can properly prepare you enough, if that makes sense. Like, you kind of got to take that leap of faith on your own, because there is a lot that preparation wise, I felt like, okay, I know kind of what I'm doing. But then when you get there and you're like, oh, it's real now. You have hard deadlines. You're also working with the same, 15 people. How does that work? How do you navigate the newsroom balance? How do you speak up when you think a story, you want to cover a story and maybe someone doesn't think it's a good story, or, someone thinks this is a story and you're like, I don't really think this is a story. so that day-to-day grind of, I would go in, my shift was, I would get in at 3, and then I had a sport.
AM or PM?
PM.
Okay, some people might have the AM. Okay.
Yeah, no. For sports, it's generally speaking PM.
Yeah.
So 3 p.m. And then I would go and I would see, before I got into work, I would kind of see like, okay, here's what I could do. Like, here's some things that, like today, the Bills are getting ready to face off against the Colts. One of the Bills' offensive linemen is now on the COVID reserve list. So that would be, pretty high up in my show. And what does that mean for the team? All this stuff. So it's things like that. And then from there, we had a sports director when I was first there that would anchor the 6 o'clock, and then he would leave. So I would be responsible for getting all the highlights and picking out what games I wanted to go to for later that night. I would go out, I would shoot the games, I would come back, I would edit together all the video, I would produce my 11 o'clock sportscast, do my makeup, my hair, and go out and anchor the 11 o'clock sportscast. And there were days where I was like, it's just not going to happen. Like, I would be like losing my mind because I'm like, how is this all going to work? I think the amazing thing about this job, though, is like you have to make it work. So you just do. There are just days where you're like, I'll be done. And I'm like, how did that all come together? But it does. And then the realization, too, of like, I really like that every day when I go to work, I can say I accomplished X, Y, Z. Like if I did a show, I know maybe it wasn't my favorite show, but I did this. You know what I mean? I'm very detail oriented. I'm also very deadline oriented. So I need deadlines. I know how I work. But I really appreciate that aspect of the job because every day that I'm there, I can show, hey, I did this today. And I like that sense of accomplishment, honestly, because it's fun, like looking back at all the things I've done over the years.
No doubt, whether it's telling somebody's story that maybe someone locally didn't know about, whether it's sharing a highlight of something that happened at a game, a sporting event, getting those local athletes, teams, coaches, those stories and being able like, okay, we as a team or me as a professional are able to do those types of things. That's the great part about having this opportunity to have this job and being a professional, all those things. So you're doing those things in Elmira. And then Rochester is the next step. So as I always like to tell people, this is your current employer. So say as much or as little as you'd liked about how you actually landed this job and what now your responsibilities are.
No, I love my job here in Rochester. So I actually met my current boss because this is also another thing that I recommend. Like I was working with my coworker. His name was Dan Fates, who I actually now work with in Rochester. We work together in Elmira. And I remember us having a conversation of like, yeah, we do the day-to-day stuff, the very hyper local sports, but I was like, I want to cover the NFL. And he's like, I want to cover the NFL too. So there were days that we would drive to Buffalo on a day off and we would go to the Bills game and we would do reports and stuff like that. So one day I was like, hey, we're going to go up to Bills training camp, which is in Rochester. And that's just shy of a 2-hour drive. And so I went up and it's also terrifying sometimes. Like you have no idea what you're doing. You're like blindly, like I'm supposed to be here.
Yes.
No idea where I'm going. Everyone knows each other. There can be that like first day of school jitters type of thing. And I remember meeting my now boss and I was like, we were talking and chatting. I had no idea who he was, which that's on me. I should have probably done a little bit more research. But I actually think it was better that way because I was able to have like a more candid conversation. Like we were able to talk and I wasn't like super intimidated type of thing. And then he actually reached out to me. He emailed me and was like, hey, like we might have an opening coming up in a couple months. Send me your reel, which obviously is like your portfolio. It's like, okay. So I sent him my reel and he's like, hey, I really like XYZ about your stuff, but I think you could improve, like lose the cliches, lose certain, like I would say, like filler words, essentially. Lose those. Things like that, where I was like, okay. And he was in this job, you have to be able to take criticism. My thing is, if I respect you, I will take your criticism. If I don't respect you and your job and how you do your job, I might be like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of like do my own thing. But I respect the hell out of Mike Catalana, my boss. So I was like, okay, yeah, definitely. And then it turned out a couple months later, they had an opening. He called me right away. I actually remember my interview because I drove up from Elmira And Mike was like, hey, you're just going to meet a couple people at the station. It'll take like maybe a half hour. I was there for 5 hours. I met everyone. General manager, news director, executive producer, I felt like I was going to meet like the janitor. I met everyone. I was late to my job in Elmira because I was leaving this job interview. But I got there and I was really intimidated. Obviously, it was my first time really covering an NFL team. And then the Bills were struggling. They had Rex Ryan as their head coach. They were kind of in the drought years. It was kind of a free fall for them. But it's been quite a ride, and I've learned so much. And I'm really thankful because we're one of the rare stations that gets to travel to a lot. So like we get the opportunity to go. I've been to Super Bowls, I've been to combines, I've been to drafts, I've been to playoff games. Like we travel to everything, and that is a really cool experience and one that I feel very fortunate for. And then also like I love the people I work with. So I feel like I really I hit a home run being here.
Yeah, and your guys' coverage is fantastic. I know Levac and I, my partner, we've seen you up at St. John Fisher doing your thing. We love all that stuff that continues with the Bills coverage for you guys out in Rochester. But just to like go back a little bit too about, look, you landed a job in Rochester and you've been able to do this. You've had the experience. Did you put any added pressure on yourself the first time you had a Bills highlight or something with your name when you're working out in Rochester? Like, okay, this is the first one. Let me get through this. You talked about like those first day jitters, that first highlight jitters. Did you feel that, or did you feel like you had enough relationship with your staff already basically doing the tour for 5 hours that I'm going to be okay?
Okay, let me tell you a funny story. So this is not as much about covering the Bills, but my first month I was at Wham. We cover Syracuse basketball as well. This was the year, it's 2016. Syracuse made that incredible run to the Final Four. So they solo sent me out to Chicago to cover the Elite Eight. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So we're outside, we're doing our stand-ups. It's windy in Chicago, Windy City.
Nice.
My camera blows over and breaks. I call up my boss and I say, thank you so much for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed my month here. I really appreciate everything you've done for me, but I literally thought I was going to get fired. I was like, that's it. That's all she wrote.
It's been a good run.
He thought I was kidding. And I was like, no, like I broke the camera. And he was like, well, that happens. And I was like, oh my gosh. Thankfully, he was fine with it. And like, we got everything figured out. But I literally was like, I was so nervous. Probably the first year. I still get nervous because I love what I do. And like, I feel like if you don't get nervous, you're not invested enough, if that makes sense. Obviously, it's not the same nerves. But it's definitely like that anticipation of like, and it's fun, like especially now that they're good. It's like if it's a great game, like absolutely, you're so into it. So yeah, that's something that I'm like, wow, I'm honestly shocked I'm even here considering I broke the camera like 4 weeks in, but here we are.
There you are. That's exactly right. You overcame the camera, and by the way, Syracuse wins that game. They go to the Final Four. It's an amazing comeback. We can leave all that off, though. Hopefully the boss didn't check. He probably did. But all that stuff happened. But that point you just had is really interesting because, look, you mentioned that Syracuse is going to go to the Final Four. The Buffalo Bills from your tenure from when you started to where they are now have improved. But that's a really good thing for whatever type of sports job you're going for, a broadcast, because when the expectations of the team starts to rise, it makes everybody better around you, just like an actual team in sports where if your teammates are good, it makes you step up your game. So that's the fun part about the job too, though. Like when the team is, you get to do all these events, which is probably the biggest change you've seen covering the Bills, is that now the players are good, the games are good, the fans are always passionate, but you're having probably more fun than ever before.
Yeah, because people want to hear about the team. They're not just, the Bills weren't even, it wasn't like they were bad. They were just boring. They were just mediocrity. You know what I mean? And like, who cares if they didn't break the playoff drought? Like there was always, I mean, Bills fans are one of the most passionate bunches I've ever come across ever. I just feel like it's been really fun. Yeah. It's cool to see a team grow like that too in such a short period of time, because I mean, the team was bad. They were bad. And to see where they were at and now where they are and where they also want to go, and the fact that they're Super Bowl contenders, like that is just, it's so cool. That like never loses its just awe to me, because we went to the Super Bowl in 2020 in Miami, Chiefs 49ers. That game was wild. That was cool. But I never thought the Bills would be in the AFC Championship last year at the start of the season. And to see them take the jump that they have. And then this year, like the expectation is they're going to be one of those final teams left standing. It's really cool and it's really fun. And I think it makes the experience more enjoyable too, because people really are invested as well.
For those who may not be familiar with the Buffalo fans as much as you are, is there one moment, whether it's maybe a pregame before a regular season game, maybe it's after the team arrived, where maybe you caught it on and aired it at Wham at some point that, okay, this is one of these amazing examples that is so unique to the Buffalo Bill fan base that I don't know what other fan base that have this type of passion for showing it off to their team?
I mean, I'm trying to think of what game it was. Well, there's a couple. There's one they had a big win on the road. It was December, and the Bills came back through the airport, and there were fans lining the airport, waiting for them to get back. I mean, it's winter in Western New York. Like, that is no cakewalk, as we are all very aware of living in upstate New York. And then, even more so than that, after they lost in the AFC Championship, they were coming back from Arrowhead. And there were just as many fans out there after they lost. Like, that to me, I get like the chills just thinking about it.
Me too.
Again, we're talking January, and it's cold, and people are out there waving signs, passionate as ever, screaming their head off about their team and how proud they are of their team, even though they didn't even win. Like, that's incredible.
I'm sure you're sick and tired of asking and talking about this question about a certain sideline incident, but some people have never heard the story before. I saw the reaction because Levac and I, the first time we had you on with us on the radio side of it, we asked you immediately about this. So hopefully you're not fatigued by it, but for an audience who might be hearing it for the first time, take us through that. Maybe when they Google your name, and I don't know if it's still your Twitter profile pic like it was for a while.
Yeah, it's still the background on my Twitter profile. But so I got hit on the sidelines at an NFL game. This was like 4 years ago now. The Bills are hosting the Bucks, and I got trampled by Mike Evans. And it is honestly, go check out the video if you can, because it is pretty hilarious. I was not injured. I was fine. I don't know how I was fine, considering I got ran into in the end zone. But it was just funny because it happened so fast. Like, the NFL sidelines, they are so fast. And I was shooting the game actually this past weekend at MetLife Stadium when the Bills were playing against the Jets. And there was a Stephon Diggs touchdown right in front of me. And in my head, I was like, don't back up. You're not going to get hit. Don't back up. Don't back up. Like, I was like, I wanted to bail so bad because I was like, if you get hit once, that's on them. If you get hit twice, that's
on you.
So yeah, my hair is flying in the wind. Like, it's a funny photo. And again, I was fine. My mom called me immediately after. So the Fox camera guy turned to me after it happened. He's like, I just put you on national TV. And I just thought he was saying that to just kind of pick at me.
Yeah.
And then my mom called. She lives in Saratoga. And she was like, Jenna Margaret, what are you doing? You've been through so much. And I was like, oh, okay, Mom. I'm like, I'm fine. It's all good. It was a good laugh, but I did not expect the response that it got. But it was cool. I say cool. It was hopefully a once in a lifetime type of experience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly how that goes down. We may or may not on the social media promotion of this interview use that picture just one more time for you, just because.
That's fine.
Okay, that's fine.
Territory.
Did Mike Evans reach out to you after that, by the way?
So he did tweet at me. So because I had just so I had been diagnosed with cancer in 2017, and I was in remission at that point, and I'm still in remission now. I'm very thankful to say that. But I'm a very sarcastic person. So and everyone was reaching out to me like, are you okay? So after it happened on the sidelines, I tweeted out like, Mike Evans and cancer can only knock me down temporarily, but I don't recommend either. and people thought that was good. I was like, I don't even know how I was able to put that together. But and then Mike Evans was like, oh, you're so tough. Like, it was nice of him to say that. But I was like, oh my gosh, it just cracks me up looking back at the video now. It feels like it was yesterday, and then it also feels like it was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, and you've hinted at this, like how this all blew up, because a mix of this is your story, your personality, the things you've done in your career, Mike Evans. Usually we end these interviews talking about the best advice for young broadcasters and everything else, but you've done such a great job throughout this entire course of the interview, laying out different things, whether it's internships, whether it's getting on-air reps, whether it's reaching out to people that, if it's okay with you, I'm going to pass on the advice for young broadcasters. If you missed it, just hit that rewind button here on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, And let's talk about that. I know it's personal
Mhm.
to you, but that battle you had against cancer and what it's meant for both other people who have maybe followed your career now and what it's meant for you overall as a professional in your craft.
Yeah, no, I think it's given me another layer of empathy. And my brother is a cancer survivor as well. I'm one of three children, and two of us have had cancer. And for me, I think it also just kind of gives me kind of a different perspective. I feel like what I went through, I was 26 when I was diagnosed, so I was, I saw all my friends like getting married and like having babies and buying houses, and I was like, I am literally going to the infusion clinic, and that was really hard. And I think for me, it kind of solidified. I heard this advice, and it was like, when something just clicks, it was like, Jenna, you're running your own race. And that is something that I've had to remind myself many times. And I feel like even for the industry in general, you might see someone coming out of college that gets this job and you're like, why didn't I get that job? Why didn't I have this? Why are they getting picked for that? But you are running your own race. And I think that it's it's made me realize that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, because the support system that I had here was truly incredible. I mean, my boss and I, we are very close. He is literally, I call him my Rochester dad because we're so close. Like, he took me to chemo appointments. And like that, to me, that type of bond, don't get me wrong, I would love to go network one day. I have aspirations of that, but I needed to be here, and I firmly believe that. And I think that now being healthy, like, I just have a different level of appreciation. And I feel like too, while most of our work we do with the Bills, and while they have injuries that they battle back from, and obviously it's not exactly the same, I know what it's like to have your identity be stolen away from you, to have everything that you thought you were and literally not be able, like, I would look in the mirror and not even recognize myself. And I know for an athlete maybe it's not that literal, but if someone tears their ACL and they're out for the season, they are completely isolated from a team. What that does to someone, what that can be like, how they battle back, like, I feel like because of that, I can kind of connect with players on a level that's a little different and a little deeper, and I'm very appreciative of that, because that's like where you get the good stuff. And I don't mean even just like for the on-air product. I mean just in general. Like, our job is about connecting with people, and I think that is such a huge thing. And it's not just about getting a really good soundbite. Like, I want to know these players' stories and what is important to them and what stuff means to them, because I know what it's like to have no idea what normal is, or to just be craving. Like, I was off for about a month and a half, and I could not wait to get back to work, because I just wanted to feel like myself again. And I think through my experience, yeah, it's just given me a different perspective and a different way to look at things. And I feel like, I questioned for a long time, like, why? Why did this happen? I'm never going to know why, but I feel like it's almost my superpower because of the way I can look at things and have it be different than maybe other people that are out there.
Well, thank you for sharing that story
Yeah.
publicly. I know how vulnerable it can be and how people can perceive that and what it means, but the fact that you're still open enough to share that story, really, you don't know the audience that it touches, whether it's people
Yeah.
who are hearing this story for the first time across upstate New York. Thank you for doing that. And you touched
Yeah.
on your support people and people who have had your back. What can someone who's listening to this podcast, this show for the first time, do to help support the people who might be going through a similar journey right now in 2021 that you went through a few years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I volunteer with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. They're an organization that was huge to me when I was sick. They just, you can have a mentor system or anything like that. But I honestly feel like the biggest thing is just to, like, it's all love. That's the way I put it. Like, it's all love. Like, I never want to make someone's day worse, because it's really is true that you don't know the battles that people are fighting behind closed doors. Like, I didn't make my diagnosis public until I was done with treatment and things like that. So I just think a little kindness goes a really long way. And then I also like to think of it as like the cherry on top. Like, I have a lot of days that are just like the cherry on top, because, like, how lucky am I? How lucky are we all? Like, there's obviously things that go wrong 1,000%, but like, I'm healthy. I have people around me that love me. I love them. I get to do what I love. Like, all the good days, they're just the cherry on top of that.
Well, we love you in the Capital Region. You are our proud daughter of all those things, our sister, whatever term you want to use. We love you here in the Capital Region. Hopefully people listen across upstate New York become fans of yours. We always say, Levesque and I, next time we're in the Capital Region, we're going to track you down. But I like this idea better. Los Angeles. If the Bills are in the Super Bowl, that's when we're all going to hang out together. So let's make that happen. We'll close on a nice note. Bills, Super Bowl, Capital Region connection out on the West Coast in February. How's that sound?
It's a deal. How about that?
Awesome. Jenna, thank you so much for doing this. It's appreciated. Continue the great work out in Rochester and hopefully connect again real soon.
Thank you so much.